Good morning or afternoon, players, gamers, and critters. I am Master Mimic, and welcome back to another episode of Roaring D20s, my little show where I sit here and talk about all things D&D related, including The Gamer's Dorkness Rising, a little movie that I mention these days because it is by far one of the most influential films about D&D to ever come out in recent years, if you count recent year. Anyway. So, this film has been the source of so many references in my group alone, and honestly, I think it even popularized, there we go, the stereotypes that are often associated with certain classes. I'll get into that later. So what is this movie about? Well, obviously, since it's about D&D, it focuses around a party of players who sit around and play the game, and the movie kind of jumps between the real world and then jumps into this fantasy world where they're, based around the game they're playing. This is the majority of where the jokes come from, because this movie not only shows off the positive aspects of the game, but also shows the negative, but in often a realistic but just as humorous fashion, to where you can't help but just laugh at how absurd things are if you're not, familiar with the game, but those who are will find it just as hilarious because of how realistic it is. So the movie is about, like I said, a group of players who are sitting down to play the game. You have Kevin Lodge, or Lodge, played by the movie's director, Nathan Rice. And basically what Lodge is trying to do, he's trying to create his own adventure module and get it published, known as the Mask of Death. The problem is, though, is his party is, well, they're a bunch of murder hobos, and they have this style of play that is not only extremely aggressive, but it's just kind of chaotic, essentially hit it until it stops moving kind of mentality. This often leads to repeated TPKs, or total party killings, and so at this point Lodge is just directionless. He doesn't know if he'll ever finish this module, and he's frustrated. To try and remedy this, they decide to include a fourth character, or a fourth player, into their little group, choosing to go with Joanna. I know, oh girl. And yes, the show, or movie, does make a heavy reference that everyone is astonished there is a female D&D player. God, I will say this too. Sometimes this movie feels a little dated. Anyways, so, well, this is essentially the whole movie, is trying to play the game and then whatever trials they encounter in this fantasy world. Said trial being, the heroes are sent by the Hierophant of the Grand Illuminated Holy Order to destroy the Necromancer Moron from using the Mask of Death to conquer the kingdom. I'm honestly really happy I got that in one go, because I made that note, my little notepad here, I was actually kind of sweating a little bit. Anyway, the Hierophant sends them to destroy Mort Kimnon, and the whole movie just shows all the little, from this adventure. You'd think it would be pretty straightforward, but again, this is D&D. Nothing is straightforward. I mean, first of all, you have encounters with goblins and demons, and, I'm not going to go too, because those who have seen the movie will know exactly what I'm talking about, and those who haven't, you gotta see this movie. I'm not going to spoil, because this is one of those films that needs to be experienced, especially, I almost want to say it's almost a requirement to love D&D. So let's go characters and whatnot. So obviously you have Lodge, who played by, like I said, the movie's director Nathan Rice. Lodge is the master, but in this latest go at his adventure, he creates a Sir Osric, who immediately named the babysitter, basically. All players dislike him, all except for Joanna. Joanna is new to the game. She has played amazingly. Roscott, I'm so sorry if I got that name wrong. And so she's new to doesn't quite understand all the rules of it, and she also happens to be the ex-girlfriend of the party's as that guy plays Lewis named Cass. Joanna plays a human fighter named Daphne, and who is essentially one of the characters in the party. Ironically, because this is only because Joanna read the book start to finish, understood where her own strengths come from, and then put them into her character. You have people looking at her character, she going, "Why do you have charisma? You're a fighter." And yet, this allows her to get through a lot of situations. She thinks strategically, uses tactics in battle, and this leads to many, many victories that the players, well, not a lot of them, but I'll say, count all her accomplishments. A lot more kind-spirited, I'll say. Nowhere near the hobo, murderous tendencies of her party members. She cares much more about story than anything else. Doing something later in the movie that has Cass freaking out to the point where he leaves. I'm not going to say what it is, but not because it's bad, but just it's a moment. Like it is that moment that every GM, DM, whatever in their characters. So speaking of Cass, like I said, Cass is that guy of the group. If those who don't, that means he's the rule lawyer. He's the who constantly disagrees with the GM. He's the guy to try and tick off the GM, including purposely going against the campaign setting. An early example being he creates a character that he announces elven race. Immediately lodges off because he says that his world is taking a very Western European style. There's more human. Well, it's almost predominantly human. No elves. This is more. One, it kind of helps ground his story a little bit more. I don't know. I think if anything, it's more because they didn't have the elves and dwarves and whatnot. But anyway, this monk brother Silas or Silence is essentially that he's essentially the person of the party who tries to be wise. To describe it, the spotlight shine on him as often as possible. The problem is, though, Cass isn't that wise ever. So you get such amazing from this guy that he attempts to sound, ever wise and very knowledgeable on the weaving fate and destiny. And really, he's just spouting. There's nothing coming out of him. And Cass and Joanna butt heads the most because, like I said, Joanna is his ex, and Cass immediately starts a bad level with her when his character sheet, where, excuse me, where her character is described as wearing bikini man, and this is obviously played off for laughs. The person Cass is, he's just such a jerk. He softens later on. He's meant to make life as difficult for Lodge as possible. Is Gary, played by Christian Doyle, as who plays a female sorceress, game by Jennifer Page, who is essentially the most destructive and chaotic of the entire party, often murdering NPCs or doing of evil that obviously puts her in the with Sir Osric, to the point where Sir almost tries to kill her, but, doesn't go off that way. But that's just the idea of the kind of woes that Law go through. This sorcerer, her name's Luster, is constantly bringing the whole, screeching halt as she does some of murderous activity that basically throws a wrench in the works. Following after is Scott C. Brown, who plays the Bard. Flynn, I'll just say, arguably popularized the type of being squishy and womanizing. It's to the point where Flynn is using every NPC of female variety that he comes across, including a priestess that even Lodge has stated made a vow of chastity, and yet Flynn's charisma is just so over the top that he can just, that confessional, and anyways, But the ongoing joke with Flynn is that he is dangerously low on HP, to the point where often it takes only a single hit from S to down him, leading to one of the best jokes of the movie. Those who've seen the movie know exactly what I'm talking about. Those who haven't, you need. And so this, you have the fighter, you have the monk, you have the sorceress, you have the bard. So these four characters are going up against Mort Kemnon, who is I'll basically describe as he's your typical mustache twirling villain, the king. And yes, this is purposeful. Even Lodge, excuse me. Even Lodge at one point to Joanna, like, yeah, my NPCs are basically carve-outs, and there's not a whole lot of imagination to this, which is okay. That sounded really mean, but a lot of imagination gone into making these characters. But then this is D&D. You can do whatever the heck you want, And so this adventure is by far the perfect representation of D&D. Of the classic argument of the players. You have the dangers of forcing a babysitter down someone's throat, or a player or a plot down someone's throat. The conflicts between experienced new players. You have the frustration of a GM just the adventure going, but the players keep stopping to do ridiculous, and often having to shrug, go with it, or actually cater to fulfill whatever desire, trying desperately to stay on story. It's beautiful. Like, I saw this movie pretty early on in my adventure, and so I feel like a lot of this is an inspiration. Not only does the movie show perfectly a GM and that guy of the group, constantly butting heads. I mean, it's to this point where Cass is, like I said, he's the rule lawyer, except when it has to do with or something that would benefit him. He has to avoid a mind enslavement spell, for example, and although Lodge is quick to say, okay, well, he does it, Cass goes, do I get the save? Which is, arguable, except when this save, and Lodge very much rubs it in his face. This is what I mean by it kind of shows the relationship that between the GM and the players that can go very wrong under the right circumstances, if that makes sense. So it's essentially trying to show that Lodge goes through an arc of himself through Joanna, where he realizes it's not him against the players. This is all their adventure. The players are just helping direct it and are helping shape the adventure in a way that Lodge just kind of has to go with, but also have fun in his own right. Don't let players directly drive the story, because after all, that's what the GM is. He's a storyteller. But you can't always expect, 3 or 4 free-willed human beings to just go. As soon as you try railroading a party, there is going to be tension. Aren't going to go there. They're wanting so badly to derail because they want to make it exciting for themselves. I mean, it's even to a point where early in the movie, character Daphne stops to talk to an NPC because she wants to know more environment, more about the culture, the surroundings, the kingdom. But because all the other players of this group have all written this, they're all saying, hey, those mountains over there look mighty adventurous, but we go over there. But this is the thing, though, is this is a classic case of metagaming. There is no way those characters would naturally know where to go unless they talk to NPCs. But because they are so much of a rush to just get back to where they were before they were all wiped out in their last attempt, they're just willing to basically fast forward through all the elements, knowing basically everything that's going to happen. I mean, then Lodge, who throws things in there, like, for example, Sir Osric, a character that was a huge in the plans of the party, because here's a paladin through and through. There is sense. And so he's not going to allow them to go around, as they put it, killing everything that moves. So that is why I just love this movie so much. It perfectly captures D&D and those who play it and all the trials that come with it, but also the treasures. You get, like I said, you have Cass, who wants everything to go his way. He wants to be, the badass of the group, except he's not. You get Luster, who wants to be, constantly, who wants to be constantly killing things, but every now and then, to a humorous degree, Gary, the player, tries hitting on female NPCs, except you're playing a female sorceress, so not a lot of women are, susceptible to your charms. God, this movie is dated in that way, at least. You have Flynn the Fine, who is trying to be jovial and inspirational with his his wonderful little antics, and yet it's pelted by goblin arrows. It's just, that's the way it is. I don't know what else to say about this movie. It's just, I will say that this movie is by far the best D&D inspired there. I mean, I'll even say in any movie that has ever come out of Hollywood. And I'm looking at The Adventures of Vox Machina. I know that's a show, so it kind of has a little bit more advantage because of time, but we'll see how that stacks up. But I will even go so far as to say that maybe without a Flynn the Fine, there wouldn't be... Let me see. What else can I say about this movie? Well, I've been talking a lot about this, and you guys are probably, those who haven't seen the movie are going, all right, sign me up, if you really want to get your hands on this movie, you do have to go through, because unfortunately, Paizo, the people who did Pathfinder and Starfinder, have sales rights to the film, so you will only find it on their site. Their site can be a little I've had a couple of moments where I try the film for myself, only for either the site to screw up my order, or one time it ended up with me buying 3 or 4 copies of the movie without even my input on it. So I had to kind of call up Paizo support and have them actually delete, because I'm not, as much as I love this movie, I'm not going to pay for it. So essentially, if you're looking for this movie, just know you have that kind of hurdle to go through. After you see it, and maybe for those who don't know, even if they have seen the movie, you guys will be happy to know that Nathan Rice's module from the movie, or Lodge's module from the movie, it was published. It was actually published by Wizards of the Coast under the Mask of Death. It is an actual adventure mod you can play with your party, and that's just so freaking cool. I love when things like that happen, where not only is this movie made, but then the person behind it actually has, their real and their imaginary goal accomplished. That not only did Nathan Rice get his, module published, but also Lodge did in the movie. And it's wow, it's so great. That's another thing I need to get my hands on. Because that'd be just an amazing treat for my players. I just hope I don't have a Cass when that time comes. Anyways, that's basically all I need to say about this movie. And I guess that's basically it for today. Thank you all for listening. My name is Master Mimic, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Hopefully it won't take me as long this time. Have a good one, everybody.